I had some questions about, talk to me, Shipper, about the, cleanup of the longevity payments.
We paid out all the longevity payments in November, and, longevity is budgeted based off of the numbers I think that we get from HR based on just, the only people that get paid longevity is, support staff, 12-month employees, usually not teachers. Some teachers still get career ladder, so this is just, now that we've paid it all out, it's a once-a-year type of thing, we can clean it up, so we're just using money from another line where we had more money in longevity and putting it to lines that didn't have enough. And turnover changes longevity, 'cause everybody who's not a teacher earns $50 a year.
Right.
After they've been here 3 years, so that's what, that is just cleaning it up.
So it's just cleaning it up. It was
Yes.
budgeted, and it's
It was
just
budgeted,
moving some.
and in some scenarios, somebody was, I guess, not budgeted for enough, and in other scenarios, some lines were budgeted for more, so.
Okay, then we move funds to textbooks from other contracted services.
Yes, and Dr. Woodard may wanna speak on that
All
one,
right.
that's the, money moving from your, other contracted services, I think, yeah.
This is money that we were using to, fund, the remaining part of Read to Be Ready and also textbooks for Columbia Central. Columbia Central is gonna offer an advanced placement, government and politics course, and there's no books for that. And so we're also gonna use the funding for that.
Okay, and the other two budget amendments are title funds, correct?
Just cleanups for title.
Is the half salary of a teacher, is that a new position for juvenile detention?
Yes, that will be a new position. Instead of an educational assistant for the remainder of the school year, we want to move monies, which would be sufficient to pay for for the second half of the year of a mathematics teacher for the juvenile detention center.
Okay, and you're gonna pay for this out of title funds? Okay. Federal, okay. Are there any questions from you all, anyone else on the budget amendment? I think we need to be on top of this more so than we have been, because the commission has questioned us so about budget amendments, and even though last month I think it was understandable that there were so many because of the timing of the October meeting, and somehow I'm not sure they understood that it fell that way, but I'm sure maybe you all are not aware too that they did not pass any budget amendments that was using fund balance. So those things that we, the athletic funds, the computers, and there's a couple of them on the agenda tonight, and hopefully that will pass, but.
They passed the Care Monkey, I think Care Monkey passed, 'cause I think all that moved forward, the Lenovo leases, that's the one, and then the $500,000 for athletics.
Well, they have asked for Chris and I and anyone else that can, make them understand why the budget amendments were needed will be at all budget meetings, and Chris Pointer is going to be there, and, we'll try to, make them understand the need for this, and, the problem being that we can spend the money, they really can't tell us how to spend the money, but they can't give us a purchase order. So it's kind of, 6 of one, half dozen of another. So, hopefully, we can make them understand, and we can move forward. I think that there just needs to be a little more trust, and we need to develop that they know that we're trying to do what's best for kids and spending the money in the best way. But anyway, we'll move on. Any other question about budget amendments? I mean to take up too much time here. Okay, excuse me, but Mr. Sampson.
I don't remember how many months ago it was when we realized that we were short however much money from, I think, Memphis or whoever, because of the juvenile detention center. What what did we do with that money?
We still have not received that money yet. The state's working with, Shelby County to, appropriately, get that money, to us. The goal would be that, since we did not hire a full-time, educational assistant for the juvenile detention center, the moving of the federal funds for the entire year will cover the second half, and the goal would be when we receive money on a routine basis, at the right times of the year, that we'll be able to still fund all the positions there, with, money, to spare. So
Okay.
we're still waiting on that to be completed, and we're hoping that will come in January.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on, instruction, Dr. Woodard.
Thank you, Chair Kinzer. Let me, pull this up here. Give me just a second. So this evening, I want to give you kind of a high-level overview of a couple of things that have been going on with the curriculum and instruction department. First things first, we had a fantastic graduation this past Saturday. We had 26 graduates at Northfield Academy who completed all the requirements necessary to earn their regular diploma. 18 of them decided to go ahead and walk, and we had 8 that just wanted to get their diploma and go. But 18 decided to walk, so it was a very quick graduation. I mean, I think we were done in 24 minutes, probably record time. So it was probably the shortest graduation I've gone to, but it was great. Lots of kids and families and the community members were here to support these students who have overcome quite a bit of adversity in order to reach the point of earning their diploma, so it was a great celebration. We have selected 12 applicants for the Teacher Leadership Institute that we're excited about, and those 12 will meet with folks from Lipscomb on Wednesday, and then we're going to get them through the Teacher Leadership Institute starting in January, and they'll graduate in June. We have earned 96 industry certifications up to this point, and we're on pace to do really well. Last year we had 373 industry certifications by the time graduations happened, and so we're hoping to beat that number again this year. So they're rolling in, and we're doing pretty well there. With regard to the high schools, this is a very, very busy time of the year. As you all know, we're in fall achievement testing right now. Fall achievement testing will end actually tomorrow, and the rest of the days this week will be makeup days for kids who might have missed an exam of sorts. And so we'll be boxing up the tests and getting those back to the State Department. So it's a really busy time. Also for seniors, this is semester 7, and this is the semester that they look at the GPAs that you will be applying for scholarships based on. And so we'll be making sure that transcripts are running accurately because we just adopted the new software system, EduPoint. So we'll be doing a lot of work to make sure that everything is right. So credit verifications and those kinds of checks will happen after we run transcripts in January. So a lot going on. Advanced placement scores, good news to report. We had 353 students that we tested this year, and we had 154 that either earned a 3, 4, or 5. So we saw an 8% increase in the number of students who passed the AP test. Now, the number of students who are tested is down. We have more students who are opting to go with dual enrollment, and that's their preference. Some prefer dual enrollment, and some prefer the AP. So either track is great. You can earn credit either way for college. And so our advanced placement numbers are increasing. You can see here, compared to 17-18, that we had 35% that passed in 17-18 and 43% this year. Our goal was to try to hit 50%, but we're really making a big strides to get there. So real pleased about that. Of course, we want to see the number of 5s increase, but the number of 3s and 4s are looking pretty good as well. So real pleased about what we're seeing with regard to advanced placement tests. You can look on page 2 of this document, and page 2 will show you what tests were passed and attempted. And so also all the subjects that we offer in advanced placement in the entire district. So we offer quite a few courses. And so kids have a variety, a plethora of courses that they can choose from if they want advanced courses for college. So real pleased about that. ACT results are also in, and we did improve in ACT. We're happy about that. Had a slight bump from 19.4 to about 19.6. and we're behind the state by about a little over half a point, so not bad. I think we're in the hunt once again. The state is at about 20.2, we're about 19.6. So again, this is a move in the right direction for us. So we're pleased about that. That's just a brief high-level overview of what's happening now. We're just trying to finish the semester strong. At this point, all principals have been evaluated. All principals have received their first evaluation for the fall semester, and those evaluations have been logged into the Tennessee Department of Ed Compass system. And at this point, we're going to have a breakfast with principals on Wednesday to kind of treat them for their hard work, and then we're going to finish strong with exams and finals, and then wrap up on the 20th. So it's been a good first semester, so things are going pretty smooth. Last but not least, I want to mention that we do have 7 aspiring administrative candidates, and I want to send a shout out to Jake Wooliver. Jake Wooliver was our guest lecturer this week with our Aspiring Admin Academy, and boy, they asked him some really tough questions and put him in the hot seat for once. So, but he did an outstanding job, and of course, he made class fun and engaging for those aspiring future principals. So, Jake, thank you for being there the other night. Really appreciate that. That's just a quick, brief, high-level overview of academics. Thank you.
Don't go anywhere. I think that since we're on curriculum instruction right now, and thank you for that. When I asked both of them to be able to just keep us informed and make reports at these work sessions, and so I think that's very positive that you're able to do that. But what I think I'd like for us to discuss, because when you look at the timing of it, if we can come to some consensus about textbooks
Yes, ma'am.
that we can vote on in January, then we can take them to the budget meeting on the 13th and hopefully have them passed in the January commission meeting. So what are your, having seen the notes from the roundtables, and those of us that attended the roundtables, Will was there, Mr. Fulbright was there, I attended, Ms. Parker, Mr. Moore. I thought it was really interesting. I especially listening to the elementary teachers. They seemed really consistent in what they wanted. So I would really hope you can give us some idea about the price for that Read to Be Ready software. And I wonder if there's any board members that have comments to make about that. Do you? What do you want to do about textbooks? You know, we didn't vote on what Dr. Woodard asked us because we wanted to hear what the teachers said. And he proposed last time doing the Spanish and algebra. I certainly think we need to do the algebra without doubt, okay? And maybe the language, I don't know. But I do think we need to, tonight, have something that we can bring to the board in January, that we can vote on, that we can get it through the commission and order some textbooks. So I need feedback here. So, Will, what do you think?
So, I guess just from the meetings, what I gathered was that elementary teachers seemed like their year was set. They said, please do not give us, or they were okay with giving them the curriculum now, but they said, please don't make us implement it immediately. They said, if we get it, we can start processing for us to implement 2020. Middle school, they were in the middle, it seemed like. Some said, yeah, give us some said, no, don't give us some. High school said, we want curriculum now. And so, I agree, the algebra, I feel like, it could be used immediately. On the elementary side, it seemed like
They want the component, didn't they? Read to Be Ready, Read to Be Ready component. iReady, excuse me.
Yeah, I couldn't remember the name of it.
iReady.
Or, yeah, they like the Ready Math, and the ones who have the Ready, is it Ready Reader or Ready Reading, they liked it as well. So I don't know what kind of price tag it comes with, though.
Do you? How much? Okay. All right. Mr. Fulbright, you were there. Do you have any comments about the teacher? Yeah.
It was a lot of, like you said, not trying to just throw things in the middle and try to make it up as we go along, but to have a real plan going forward. I think that's just the biggest thing, and, I mean, I've had my struggles, or our home has had our struggles with algebra over the last couple of years, so that, something's gotta be done there, so, yeah.
So, what do you think?
Well, first off, let me say, board members, thank you for proposing the suggestion of the textbook roundtable. Though I was frustrated that we didn't, make the vote on November 4th, every time you all have asked me to go back, in the last 4 years, every time you've asked me to go back and take a second look, it has been somewhat worth it. Now, I'm not suggesting that you keep telling me to do that, because at some point I want the green light. But I am saying that every time you slowed me down a bit and asked me to go and take a second look at something, it has been worth the while. There was some great dialogue, but I think you all kind of heard what we've been hearing for years. You had a chance to hear what we hear on a regular basis, and when you hear from teachers, it's kind of a mixed bag. You get some of everything. You have some that like this program, some that don't like it. You have some that want to go in this direction, some that want to go in that direction, and it gets to be overwhelming. And at some point, what we have to do is rely on our instructional leaders, who are the principals, who also have an understanding of curriculum, where we need to go, to begin to narrow it down and generate buy-in from their staff members, and then we have to implement. At some point, we just have to make a decision and go, and that's where we meet with our instructional leaders. Before we went down the journey of Ready Math, I called a meeting over at the Columbia Boys and Girls Club, and I asked Chauncey Julius, could we use its conference room up there, and we met in the Columbia Boys and Girls Club, and we talked about Ready Math. We talked about what direction we want to go in, and do you believe this is right? And we looked at the research behind it, looked at ed reports, and it was one of the highest rated programs in the nation at the time, and we decided to go in that direction. And we told principals that you're now going to have to generate buy-in from your faculty on this, because we know this is right and best for kids, but that doesn't mean that just because it's best for kids in our eyes that teachers will want to do it. And so it is more rigorous than what we've seen before, and we needed the rigor. By increasing the rigor, now kids are learning material that is aligned more to the test that they'll be taking. And so it's a challenge for kids who are not at grade level, because sometimes you get kids who are not on grade level. They may be 1 or 2 years behind grade level, and they're here, but the assessment they'll take is going to be here. And so that presents some challenges. The iReady component helps to bridge that gap, okay? So then we get into the age-old debate of skills versus mastery. Are we helping kids learn skills, or are we helping kids master content? And, of course, the test that they'll take is a test that assesses mastery. They want to make sure that kids actually know the material and that they can apply what they've learned over time. So I've put together a textbook recovery plan so that we can look at what we need to do as a district to catch up. I know where we are, and I have great respect for some of the tough decisions we've had to make as a board over the past couple of years, and what I wanted tonight to be about is, rather than look at blame or whose fault it was, let's just look at what we can do to catch up. Mr. Moore sent me an email, and when I see Mr. Moore, I'm going to wrestle with him because he's not here tonight, and he asked me to put together something that would kind of answer some of his questions about what it would take to get there, and I did that. And so I want to start. First off, the purpose of this document is just simply to give you historical context as to where funding has been spent in the previous years, so that we can supplement and support academic instruction here in the county. And so one of the questions that he asked was, how much should we be spending annually on textbooks? And if you look at the BEP Blue Book, we should be spending about $77.50 per child based on the number of students that we have in our county for enrollment. And that gives us a number of $980,142.50, somewhere around in there. That's what we should be spending annually. And if we spend roughly around that dollar amount every year, then we'll stay current on the most up-to-date curriculum materials that we have. And so I think that moving forward, prioritizing that number or around that number in our budget annually is going to be something that we just have to do early and often. So the next thing is I want to give you some historical context of what we have spent over time. And that is a little small. I apologize. I thought that would be a little bit bigger. Dave, can you blow that up a little bit? Just a little bit. Well, while he's doing that, what Mr. Moore asked me to do was put together kind of he wanted to know what have we spent, in terms of textbooks in our, in our, 449 line for the past 10 years. I will send this PowerPoint to you. That's a little big there, Brother Dave, but, just go back to the regular, just go back to regular now. Yeah, that's better. Can you scroll to 2009 to the left? So you can see in 2009, 10 years ago, we spent about $500,000 on ELA and science books. And in the past, when we've purchased, we typically, and I want to make sure I say this right, so you understand this. We typically adopt books, so teachers come together on textbook committees and they adopt books, and then of course we have to decide if we're going to purchase that year or later. Typically when we purchase a year or two behind when the books are actually adopted. So when you do that, you're not getting full use of the books that you buy. And so if we choose to purchase, we should choose to purchase no later than a year after the time that the books are adopted. In 2010-11, there was a purchase of ELA, math, and science materials, and the district spent about $1.5 million in that year. Fast forward to 11-12, somewhere around $34,000 was spent, and I can understand that. Most of that was spent on sped books and a little bit for regular instruction. In 13-14, the district spent $175,000 for grades 3 and 4 for elementary school reading books. In 14-15, the district spent about $393,000 for sixth grade social studies books. It was mostly social studies across the district. Sixth grade social studies, literature books, world history, geography, and then for social studies weekly in our elementary schools. In 15-16, the district spent about $19,000. That was for AP Stats, AP History, and advanced math for calculus books. Fast forward to 16-17, the district spent about $77,000 for the Discovery Tech book. In 17-18, this would have been my first year in the position. We had a budget of $94,000, but $75,000 of that was committed to the Discovery Tech book, which only left $19,000 for us to spend. And we bought AP books that year. That was mostly what we purchased was AP books. 18-19 was the first year that we decided to spend $300,000. We're moving back to where we needed to be, and we purchased Ready Math and Read to Be Ready, and so we made sure that we had curriculum in reading and math for K-8, so K-8 was strong. And this year for 19-20, we just repeated the same budget number, so we have enough for K-8 to be strong in reading and math. So that's kind of where we are. So that's 10 years of history of kind of where we are and what we spent over the last 10 years. Not every grade level was purchased for every subject. And looking back in the documents that we found, it looks like tested subjects were the priority at that time. So I want to give you some more context on what some of the other counties are doing. What are other counties doing? So in Murray County, we spend $316. Our enrollment is about 12,674, and that's without pre-K. And then, of course, you can see here that Marshall County is spending somewhere around $400,000.
Dave, can you go ahead and send it back to presentation mode?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Marshall County spends about $400,000, and their enrollment is about 5,500. Then we have Lawrence County, which is near us also. They spend about $500,000 annually, and their enrollment is 6,800. And then the next two districts are about our size. I looked at Robertson County, which spends about $900,000 each year on just textbooks, and then they also spend about $38,000 on electronic resources. So their total spending is about $1.1 million. And last I chose Tipton County. I looked at what they were spending. Tipton County spends a total of about $1.3 million with a combination of $300 and almost $350 on electronic resources, which would be online curriculum materials and things like that, kind of like iReady supplements for academics, and about $968,000 on just academic textbooks. So just to give you an idea of what some other counties are doing with regard to textbooks. So one of the things that was asked was what would it look like in terms of a number if we would give every student a book based on what we currently have. A couple of years ago I brought you all that cost, and that dollar amount would be $1.48 million. So if we gave a book to every kid right now based on what we currently have in the warehouse, or to match what we have in schools, we would need $1.48 million to supplement. Now, here's my thought on this. This is not a good option due to the fact that the standards have changed and the materials will be a little bit outdated. So we could buy those materials, but those materials are not aligned to the new tests that are out now. The next question that Mr. Moore had was, what would it cost to bring all subjects up to speed? Okay, I think the question is, I think all of you all want to know, what would it cost just right now? What's a ballpark figure to bring everything that we have up to speed, the most current resources and the most up-to-date resources that are out there? So that number is about $3.5 million. It would look like purchasing curriculum for math at about $847,000 for math K-12. For ELA K-12, which that adoption is coming up this spring, in a couple of months we're getting ready to go through that process. We figure that's about $1.5 million. It's very, very critical that we have that we show up reading K-12. That's going to be a big priority for us. For social studies, about $325,000, and then for science, about $829,000. And then, of course, for foreign language, which comes in the cheapest at about $155,000. So to bring everything up to speed, about $3.5 million to get everything current. Based on where we are with the budget, I don't know if that'll be feasible with the FY21 budget, but that just gives you an idea of what it would cost to bring us up to speed.
What's the discrepancy between social studies and the ELA? Why is there such a large gap? Are the books that much more expensive?
More books, a lot of literature books. So with ELA, you're going to have a language book and a lit book. Yeah, you're going to have more books. Then this is what the adoption cycles have looked like for the past 10 years from the state. In 2009, ELA and foreign language were adopted. In 2010, it was a math adoption year set by the state. In 2011, it was literature, spelling, and then CTE. 2012 was reading. 2013, social studies. And then 2014-15, math came up again. You can see that math was done in 2011, and then 4 years later, back in 2015, because the math standards changed and the test changed. So it's a much more rigorous math test. If you remember a couple of weeks ago, I gave you all some samples of what the Algebra 1 looks like. It's a different test than what we've seen. In 15-16 and in 16-17, the state had CTE adoptions. And so Section A would be like stuff like ag books and things like that. And then Section B would be like your business books for CTE courses. Those were adopted that year. 17-18, you had science, PE, wellness, and fine arts. And then 18-19, which was last year, we had social studies and foreign language. And then in 19-20, which is this year, there'll be an ELA adoption. And again, it's one of the more expensive adoptions because you have multiple books that you have to buy for all of your grade levels. So it's a little more expensive. So the last slide is moving forward, I want to provide for you some recommendations on what I think that we need to do over a 3-year period to get caught up as a county. Starting with 2020, I would recommend that we do math K-8 with the purchase of the iReady component. That's what the IR is. IR is iReady. So that's purchase math K-8 with iReady, purchase Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and then, of course, do ELA K-12. I think if we do that for 2020, we have shored up mathematics and ELA for the school system. For 2021,
What is that figure? 408? What?
493. I recommend using of the $500,000 that we
Right,
have
493. Okay.
for FY20 funds. I recommend using $493,000 of that to show up ready math, Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and then purchase the iReady component, but only for students who are in intervention tiers 2 and tier 3, as opposed to buying ready math for every kid. Only since it's an intervention tool, we should only use it for kids who need the most intervention, and we can have some cost savings there, as opposed to buying a site license for every student. We can save a significant amount of revenue by buying it for the kids that just need it to make up the skills gap. I think would be wise to do that. With regard to ELA, it's going to be I think we buy the full adoption, and we should budget somewhere around $1.5 million. And if we do that, then we have reading and language taken care of in the same year for the whole district, K-12. Then everybody has something K-12. The next year, when you move to 2020, you're going to see math pop up again because these books are consumable books, so you have to purchase them every year. That's been one of the challenges with the textbook companies. You know, most of them want to move to either an online book or they want to move to a consumable book that you have to purchase every year. So you're getting a cheaper price, but they want you to buy in every year. Or you can choose to buy into a 6-year price, but they're making the consumables now. So the kids, it's almost like it's a textbook that's more like a workbook. And so That's just kind of the wave of where these textbooks are going now. But in 2021, I recommend buying the math one more time, because the math adoption is coming up again in 2022. So that means we'd have 2 years of math on the books, and we're set until we know where the state is going with the new math books. Typically, when they have a new math adoption, it also means that the standards are going to change, so tests are going to change again. So we want to purchase books that are aligned to where the new tests may be going. And so I think by getting Ready Math for the next 2 years, we'll be set. I have a good feeling that Ready Math will be back. It's one of the best programs in the country, but we'll have to see what the state is going to do. I recommend doing foreign language in 2021, social studies K-8, and then biology as the only science. Right now, biology is pretty much the only science that we have to worry about in our high schools. Chemistry was cut. There's no longer a chemistry test. So if we buy biology, then I think we'll be set. Then in 2022, we adopt the full math adoption. We do science K-8, and then we do social studies 9-12 for our high schools, which would just be buying U.S. history books, and then we could purchase world history and geography books. And I think that we will be in great shape over a 3-year period. I think this will be fiscally feasible, and we can get there over 3 years as opposed to trying to do it all now, and putting the pressure on ourselves to try to do all this in one fell swoop. I think this will be the right move for the district.
So your recommendation is to the $493,000, we vote on that and put that on the board agenda to use fund balance. The 1.5 we budget.
Yes, 1.5 will be in this year's FY21 for the ELA, yes.
Okay. So if we follow this, we should be pretty caught up in 3 years, you think?
Yes, ma'am, that's our recommendation. I met with the team, and we sat in lunch, and we just discussed all this and went through old files, and this is what we believe will be the best move for the county moving forward in 3 years. But I did have one question from board members I want to ask. I'd like to ask you all a question. With the I-rated component, I know you all heard a lot about the I-rated. They really want the I-rated. There's one caveat here. The caveat is if we have enough devices in schools. That's why we thought going with just the kids who have Tier 1 and Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention will be the right way to go because of the number of devices. That means that we just need a few carts in schools as opposed to having to worry about individual laptops for every kid. That's one challenge. The second challenge would be just the sheer cost of I-ready, and looking at if we get this now, you know, would it be wise to get this now, or would it be wise just to wait and roll this out for fall 2021 for the 2021 school year, using fiscal year 21 funds, if that makes sense.
Is the I-ready components in your 493?
It is rolled in here, but I want to
Right.
know if that's what you wanted. You know, I want to know if that's really what you wanted. I just want to be sure if that's really what you wanted, because at this point, when we are in the school year, we get back in January. Some teachers indicated that they didn't want a new thing to have to learn. We'd have to find a way to get them all trained. So it would take, you know, some time and effort to get them trained on that I-rated component. And there are some teachers who are ready to go with it now, who've already had some experience in it, they want to go.
The reality of it is that we cut out textbooks when we had to somehow have a budget that the commission would pass.
Yes.
And the thinking then, when we realized we had some unexpended balance that we could spend when we had our retreat, and so that was more or less putting back in that we had taken out. And then we said we want to have a chance to talk to the teachers, see what, and we've done that. So if you don't do the I-ready now, then you're talking about spending even less when we do have these funds right now that we could begin the process anyway. I mean, you would have to add it to the 1.5 in the budget next year if you didn't do it now. So, Dr. Marzak.
Yeah, and another thing to consider is when our budget usually isn't passed till around August, school will have already started. And so by the time we get rolling, it may be the end of the first 9 weeks into the beginning of the second 9 weeks. So if we start earlier, then they'll be ready to go on August 1st. And those that want to implement it. Those that want to learn it, learn it.
Are there any discussion among Mr. Sims?
What will be the cost of the I-ready? Do you know the cost of the I-ready portion?
Well, you have to purchase the I-ready in connection with the book. That's kind of how it's sold. It's sold in connection with the book. You can buy the book separate, but the component is sold with the book. So, together somewhere around, let me check my notes just 1 second here. Since we already have the books, if we just add it for this year, it would be about $155,000. Next year, if you add the cost of what it's gonna cost for the books and the iReady, it's somewhere around $347,000. Yeah, it's pretty expensive. That's why I wanna make sure that if we go down this road, we get the bang for the buck out of it. And, if we purchase it this year, it's only for half a year. Or maybe we could use this year's funds and then, purchase it to start for fall of next year. That may be the better way to go. I just wanna know which way you all want to go. I wanna make sure I give you a good recommendation and know which way you'd rather go.
Okay, I'm not sure, everybody's shaking their head some way here. What is, okay, what do you, Mr. Fulbright?
Yeah, my head was going up and down. I think doing it for the fall, but still, I mean, 'cause I think that explanation carries a lot more weight than, well, we cut it out, now we found extra money, so now we're just gonna throw it back in. That sounds really reckless. But having it laid out in a 3-year step like you've got, and actually having it start in the fall, it makes more sense. I mean, the reality of that is you have to use this year's funds to have it ready for the fall. I have a couple other questions, but I'll hold those off till later.
So what are your wishes? The full 493,000, or just, you know, we need to, this needs to come up for us to vote on, to use fund balance for this. Mr. Sims?
So the full 493, it would, I'm just trying to process out everything. Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Ready Math would be purchased and implemented immediately, basically. Or somewhat immediately, as quick as funds, and they could be purchased.
So it would pay for Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 books to be used for now, and then
Okay.
it will buy your Ready Math and your iReady for fall of,
2021.
2021. Yeah, so we'd be ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, this is to get us ahead, so we'd already have the math. That means that when the new budget starts in February with the new money, only thing we're buying in February with the new money is just ELA. So we're using, this year's funds to purchase math for next year, and then
Okay.
we'll use next year's money just to purchase for ELA, and then we'll be ahead. But that would include getting us the algebra books.
we would need to fund the 493 to be on that plan then.
Mm-hmm. Correct, yes, sir.
All right,
I'm for that. I think,
I think so.
I think
Let's,
that's good.
if by common consent, we won't put it on consent because we've got too many board members not here that may want to know and have questions about it. We'll just have it come up, and that'll be the motion as well. And you'll send this PowerPoint out so that those that are not here can have a chance to look at this and all that. And
Yes,
Dr.
ma'am. Check Ken's, I will also add a letter. I'll add a letter to the agenda with the bid number. Yep.
We'll get a budget amendment for the board meeting ready.
Yes.
Dr. Martha?
Thank you, ma'am. And if you remember, you had slated $528,000 to be spent.
Right.
So Dr. Woodard's only recommending to spend 493 of that 528.
Okay, saved us money, see? There you go. All right, then let's move on. Are there any other discussion about instruction? Now's the time.
Yeah, I wanna ask just one question, and don't make this a long answer, just give me something short, or don't give me anything. I'm looking at Lawrence County's budget right now. They roughly spent per student 2.5 times more on textbooks, according to the numbers you put up there. Their total budget per student is pretty similar to what we have. What are we spending all the money on that it's not going towards textbooks, if you follow my question? 'Cause they're spending 2.5 more times the amount of money on textbooks than we are, but their per student spending is similar to what we are. What would be causing that huge discrepancy?
I'll tell you what, I'll talk to Johnny McDaniel and find out and get an answer back to the board. Sure.
Any other questions or comments on instruction? Okay, thank you, Dr. Woodard. Next is zoning and facilities, operational information, Mr. Perryman.
Good evening. How are you guys? I sent you a one-page document, and per your request for a high-level overview on these things, I'm gonna try to keep everything on one page, just so you can look at it. It's information that you can digest and ask questions of if need be. And I think I told you last month what I would like to do is, I'm gonna starting this month, we're gonna take a little bit on that page, a deeper dive into each one of the departments that works under operations. And then at the bottom, we'll just give you a list of projects that we've got going on right now. We chose transportation this month, honestly, because I could do that very easily, and I didn't have to involve too many other people as we're pushing into Christmas. But I normally do an overview for you guys in February of transportation. So what I did on this document was compare where we are now to where we were in February, and just kind of give you some of the same information that we've given in the past. You can see that from February to now, we've not increased our fleet size at all, but we have pushed 5 spare buses back into service. Now, partially, 2 of those came from just having to reroute at Battle Creek. Not so much because of the number of students. What we're facing on our transportation side is the number of cars moving up and down the road, and the number of neighborhoods that we're having to push into, and the design of those neighborhoods. A lot of the new design neighborhoods in Columbia, Spring Hill, and that corridor are very narrow streets. A lot of parking on the streets because the houses are so close to the road, there's not drive, and when you have 2 to 3 cars, people are parking in the street. So what we're finding is congestion is slowing us down tremendously. I've given you this example before. I'll give it again. 5 years ago when I took over transportation, we have 2 buses that leave Spring Hill High School in the afternoon and go directly to Cox Middle School. That was about a 14 to 15 minute drive. It is running 30 to 35 minutes now, depending on the day. So what happens with that is when we look at the overall route time for those buses, we've had to add buses in to cover the distance because we can't have a child on the bus more than an hour and a half. And people always say, you don't have children on the bus more than an hour. We don't have them on the bus more than an hour and a half, but we push an hour and 25 minutes lots of places. Our rural routes and the unit schools, Mount Pleasant zone operates just like a unit school as far as how it operates structurally. And then Spring Hill High School zone, if you look at it, it's a long way from Spring Hill High School to Hardison Mill. It takes a long time to get where we're going. So what they're facing, and when you see, and when I say that we pull buses into service, it's a lot of times the congestion, it's the amount of cars that we're riding. And we're also seeing a change in our ridership. Our riders in Spring Hill are different than they are in Columbia. We have a lot more high school riders because we have people coming from states where those kids didn't drive. We traditionally have had high school students that when you become a junior, you drive to school. And they're coming from places where they didn't live in an area where they could drive, or as I just said, they moved into a house that has a driveway enough for 1 or 2 cars, and they can't have a car. So we're seeing a change in our ridership in Spring Hill, but let me tell you, never fall into the false narrative that growth is only occurring in the north part of the county. Growth is occurring, there's a corridor when you look at our kids, if you come in the northern part, Saturn Parkway to 31 to 43 down through Summertown, that whole corridor that people pass through is growing tremendously, and it is slowing us. So when you look at transportation, I tried to give you the number of buses, I tried to give you the miles. We're driving about 10,802 miles a day. That is strictly on routes. That is daily routes. We have run over 75,000 miles in trips, ball games, field trips, those types of things since August. And we usually in the spring run about that again. So you're saying another 150,000 miles just for that. So you see that those numbers occur. We have 29 special needs buses that cover our district. And challenges sometimes arrive with that, with just because a program, your program may be at Mount Pleasant High School, but you may live on Sugar Ridge in Spring Hill. And that's a heck of a run. And it gives us a lot of pause and a lot of creative design. Those folks out there, Mr. Pinkston's learning that real hard right now. They have to think about a lot of things, and you have to know every back road and every rabbit trail that you could possibly fit a bus through sometimes to get folks somewhere. So if you look at that, just some numbers for you, the successes are that we are on target. The state and the federal government are ramping up the things that we have to do to meet their standards, and we are meeting them. We are ahead of the curve on those things. All of our buses now have GPS on them. We can track them where they are. Not only track them, we can see how fast they're going. So when someone calls and says there was a bus that came through my neighborhood at 55 miles an hour, we can look and say, no ma'am, it was actually going 28. And that happens quite often. So we can see those things. We have video systems in all buses now. Most buses have 5 cameras. And if you recall, about 4 years ago, we had a head-on collision in Culleoka. Since that time, we have put forward-facing cameras on all of our buses, so that we will never have a question if we have a wreck of what happened, what did that driver see, what were they encountering. And it's also helping us a lot when we start identifying the problem of folks running stop arms. And that is the number one problem that we see, is that folks just don't pay attention to that stop arm, and they put our kids in danger on a daily basis. So those are the successes. The challenges are the growth, the congestion, the maintaining a fleet size. When you run 145 buses that are 41 feet long, people tend to hit you pretty regularly, more so than I think you guys realize. People ding into us and run over us, and just keeping them going. And then also when you run machinery, we just have a natural number of buses that are down, and keeping them running. Keeping buses for those trips is a challenge. The biggest challenge that we face, and I'm going to promise you that as I talk about the departments that work for me, this is going to be the number one biggest challenge I give to you for every department, is paying our people enough to keep them. We had a driver leave Spring Hill last year, go to Williamson County to drive in Spring Hill, driving down Port Royal, driving down Duplex, the same roads that she drives down, or she drove down for us, and she made $15,000 more a year by going across the line. Now, I understand, and I will never say that we are Williamson County, but it's hard to tell someone you can drive on the same street and make $15,000 more. Not that you've got to go north a long way, but you're driving on the same road. You're passing the bus that you were just driving 3 weeks ago, and your pay has gone through the roof. We pay less than Marshall County. We pay less than, now we do pay more than Lawrence and Giles and Hickman and some of those, but that's the number one thing. And I promise you, as we go across the departments on the operations side, that's going to be the number one challenge that we have across the board. So that's just a quick overview of transportation, probably more than I needed to, but it's the one I can talk about the most. And you see at the bottom of the sheet for each of the other departments, I just gave you our current projects for the month of December, and really what we're working on over Christmas break. Our folks, as folks go home on Friday, really fire up, and the next 2 weeks is a lot of time to get stuff done while kids are not in buildings and while we do not disrupt the learning environment. So that's just a quick overview for the month.
Thank you. This is really what I had hoped it would be, that we would get to know your departments better, and I really like the little bullets at the bottom of the other departments as well. Appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any questions to Mr. Perriman? We'll move on to capital projects report. That's you too, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am. And for all the way down through the project cost report, those are just FYIs.
Okay.
And the only really thing we're coming to you with 3.3.3 are the fire rated doors at Riverside. And we have a new fire marshal that we're getting to know very well, because a lot of things that the old fire marshal kind of walked in and didn't notice, the new fire marshal's noticing. And we have some doors, 4 sets of doors at Riverside that were on our EMG list. They just weren't a high priority, that they have said have failed, and they have told us that we have to get those completed. And we've got a bid here from Eisenhower Door. It's below $10,000. We're bringing it to you because it's out of the 177 fund. And this is to just meet the compliance for the fire marshal.
Any questions? Can we put that on consent? Okay, yes, sir. All right. Next is policies.
Oh, one thing
excuse
before you move on from me,
Mhm.
just an FYI, we have worked really hard with Hewlett Spencer over the last 3 weeks. Ms. Kinzer, you and Mr. Moore specifically gave us a question for athletic facilities and scoreboards.
Yes.
We worked this week in that scope. We are now including scoreboards into the scope at Battle Creek, and they will be completed when that project is done. With no cost beyond where we already are, and it actually falls into the scope, so you guys don't even have to take an action on it.
Okay, great. That's good news. And I honestly think that anytime we build schools, I think years ago when they built the middle school in Spring Hill, they said that going forward, we would complete athletic facilities, not gonna piecemeal them anymore. And I know that there are other schools that aren't brought up to that, but that's what we need to do, so that's good.
Yes, ma'am.
At no cost.
And just one thing, if you guys ever consider a new career, go into the scoreboard business. The scoreboard installation must be where it's at today, I'm gonna tell you that, so.
Ms.
Thank
Kinzer, I
you.
have a quick question.
Yes, Mr.
Yeah.
Sims.
With us being a county buildings, do we have to have fire marshal compliance?
Yes, especially, it's not just county, but it's state fire marshals.
Okay.
And our buildings that are sprinkled, which are most of our buildings, are the ones that they really kinda come in and hardcore on it, so.
Okay. I knew there's some things that city can't, or you don't have to comply with certain city things. I wasn't sure if that
And
was
I
one
think
of
that
them.
what most folks don't understand, you always hear that we've not had a death in a US school since the 1950s because of fire, and that is just because of the strict standards that they put on us. It's estimated that maybe the new cost of a new building a school can be up to a quarter of that cost can be fire prevention.
Mhm.
So we not only get city, or county visits, we get, state visits. Mr. Hall deals with them pretty regularly, and they are, like I said, they've got a new person and they're looking at everything really closely, so.
Okay, moving on then. Policy, the first policy there is, all the other policies are all related, to purchasing. We'll talk about that in a minute, but I think Mr. Lang is here to talk about the trauma, informed additions. Policy 3.4.2.1.
Well, good evening, everyone. Yes, I have a recommendation to bring our, district policies, 6.30 up to, speed with, what the state, the laws that were passed this summer. House Bill 405 on trauma-informed discipline, and also House Bill, 664 on alternative, school attendance. What I am proposing, the green shaded areas, gives us, the, opportunity to meet the law by adding our restorative and our RTIB, multi-tiered, system of support, behavior intervention plans, and restorative type practices. These are things that we are currently doing, but we did not have them in our policy as laid out by the state law. Also, in the blue, references the other law about exclusionary discipline practices. And as you go through the current district policies that we have that's attached, you will see different colors, mostly the blue, where we've gone from a straight automatic suspend and refer, but to match the policies, the state law, to where we lessen the opportunities for suspension, but use other alternatives. In pre-K through sixth grade, the use of in-school opportunities and restorative practices are superior or asked to be done in the law before we get to a suspend and refer. So when you look through, you'll see the blue, and the addition will be in-school alternative setting for the elementary. Then when we go into the secondary, you'll see more of virtual alternative setting and also in-school alternative setting before we get to any type of suspend and refer. because, number one, we want to comply with the law. Number two, we really do have a disproportionality issue, and we do have these opportunities to lessen suspensions, but still keep the safe schools and everything that's in place that we need to have in place so that the learning environments will be productive. Any questions?
Yeah, what's a virtual alternative setting?
Virtual alternative setting is using our Edgenuity program, which we currently use, and instead of a student being suspended and just home with no assignments, the law allows us to have an opportunity to assign through Edgenuity their class assignments, etc., and they will work on those assignments. Either they can visit the alternative school and work there, or they can work from home.
Okay.
So giving them an opportunity is similar to a virtual academy, and so we're moving closer to the virtual academy, but this gives us an opportunity to assign it, to support students, and they can continue their learning, and as long as they're working 3.5 hours a day, they're not considered absent. It's not a suspension, but it is an alternative setting virtually, and that is allowable.
How will you follow this to make sure? I mean, there's a printout every day? Or?
Yes, ma'am. Through Edgenuity, every student that has the code of virtual, VAS, virtual alternative setting, there will be from Edgenuity a report that's printed every day that will let us know. Now, we haven't started this yet because it has not been approved by the board, but it will give us a list of every student from every school that may have a virtual alternative setting other than a suspension.
Is there any discussion here? Mr. Beebe?
Yeah, what was on our last, agenda, I read it through and through. And my question is, what I read was that, when there's discipline problems in the classroom, you know, it said, you know, the staff will do this. And then, you know, if it just keeps happening, the staff has to go do this. The staff goes and meets with principal. The staff meets with, you know, are you talking the staff being the in-class teacher?
Yes, we're talking about any staff member other than the administration, but we're basically talking about the classroom teacher. Okay. In the tiers in RTIB, there are certain levels of intervention. That's the model for the district. And most of the schools, and basically they all have gone through Tier 1 training, so they know in their building which offenses at what level they interact with, as far as trying to straighten out in the classroom. That's called the teacher management, the classroom management piece. Then if it escalates or it's at a higher level that they're not supposed to deal with, then that's when the office referral is written to the administrator. And that's in our RTIB plans across the district at every school, when that takes place and in which particular infractions that they will deal with or the principals will deal with.
Okay, but in the words that I read a couple of weeks ago, it was the staff would do this, several things at several different levels. Okay, all right, and if the teacher in the classroom, it's got, let's say 25 kids.
Yes.
And this one kid just keeps boom, boom, boom. You know, the whole class is disrupted. All right, and you know, I don't see that that's the proper way of doing it. You need to get the kid out of the classroom and do something besides give him 10 times, you know, give him so many times to disrupt the class.
Well, with the RTIB structure that we have, you can go from attempting a couple of things till, well, it's time for the student to be removed from the classroom. So it's not you have to do these 10 things first. That's just like if one thing a kid is sitting in his chair and talking out loud, but if they get up and start hitting somebody in the head, the teacher doesn't have to say 12 times stop.
Yeah,
So there's a
but
progression quickly.
It doesn't matter where it's teacher, the kid talking out loud
Sure.
or slapping somebody in the back of the head, you know, they're still disrupting the classroom.
They are trained and they follow the process. If the kid does not follow the interventions that we do with our RTIB, it could be proximity, it could be a look, it can be a tap on the shoulder. If they continue to disrupt, there's a time for the student to be removed from the school, from the class. That's every classroom in the county. That hasn't changed.
Well, that's the problem that me and you discussed last year, is the classroom being disrupted so many times before actions are taken.
Well, it depends on what we're talking about before actions are taken. There are several things that a teacher can do that minimizes that action, et cetera. Now, if somebody's just yelling out or whatnot and they're disrupting and they won't calm down, of course that student's removed from the classroom. I mean, that's just part of keeping a environment that's ready for learning. That's just a normal teaching management piece of, and with our RTIB, it explains and the teachers understand where and when they're going to make those moves.
Ms. Kinzer, so if, Mr. Beaver, if you look on page number 7, for elementary alone, defiance of authority or disruption of the class school environment. For defiance of authority, first offense is administrative conference, parent contact or extended learning, and disruption of class school environment is administrative contact, parent contact. And then when you go into second offense, it's automatic in-school alternative setting. So one of the things that the state is trying to do is they're trying to implement, the legislature is trying to implement laws to keep kids in classes, because what they're starting to find out is we have a disproportionate number of students across the state that are being suspended from class and being put out of school, and then that's negatively impacting their education. You know, a couple of years ago, Dr. Woodard brought to the board some information about students that have been put out of school, and we have a disproportionate number of African American males to every other demographic and every other gender, that is not being put out of school. So what we're trying to do, what Mr. Lang is trying to do, what we're talking about is how do we comply with the law while also providing or offering disciplinary options for kids, where the automatic thing is not to send them home and to put them out of school unless it's egregious circumstances. That's the idea. And that's one of the things that RTIB attempts to put tools into teachers' hands in order to prevent that from getting to that level. But by all means, I mean, if we have students that are not doing what they're supposed to do, then by all means, out of school, refer to alternative center is an option that we have at our fingertips, and I think we exercise it quite a bit. But what you're seeing in here is what we have to do in order to comply with the law, and then continuing to work with our schools to implement those strategies to help kids make better choices than negative choices. And as you've seen, a lot of our schools are winning statewide awards for their implementation of RTIB. Spring Hill High School was one of them. Highland Park, Randolph Howell, they're being noted as demonstrated in model schools with RTIB. So it's a process. We're getting there, but we're changing the mindset of just put them out. Would love to do that, but we're now being penalized financially by putting kids out of school at a disproportionate rate. So we've got to come up with some strategies to kind of curb that while also not binding teachers' hands, if you will.
Thanks, sir. Thanks, sir.
Mr. Lang,
Yes, ma'am.
on the you've added the restorative practices in all the schools, multi-tiered systems. Are we then thinking in terms that the alternative school is going to be restorative, or is it going to be punitive, or is it going to be both?
Oh, it has to be all of the above.
Okay, but do we separate them, the ones we feel are restorative, or put them all together?
Ask that question a different way for me to make sure I understand.
My understanding of restorative and punitive means we have students that have done something so egregious that we don't, and they maybe over and over time have shown that they cannot operate well in a classroom setting. So punitive is all we can do is put them in a setting where they can, they're being punished for what they've done. Is that punitive?
No, there's a wide gambit of restorative. In a
Okay.
classroom, if someone causes an issue with another student and harms someone, even if they stepped on their foot, whatever, restorative is just trying to correct that process one-to-one with that student. Also could be correcting a process with a teacher and a student.
Okay.
Okay? So when we're talking about restorative, we're just trying to help kids understand how they navigate the schooling experience.
So they go back into the classroom setting and have a better,
That is correct.
okay,
That is correct.
okay.
Restorative is kind of holistically included in everything that we do.
Okay, another question is, and I think this goes back to when there was a discussion last year about one school that you had to have so many infractions before you could send them to the office and everything. As a teacher, I didn't keep up with that. I mean, does the teacher have to keep up with 10 times, I've corrected him 10 times. So I know that teachers, by law, can remove a student from their classroom the law says you can do that you can send them to the office or remove them. So no matter what we do, if the law says we can do that, what's the 10 things I'm answering my own question here, but go ahead.
Okay, got you. Thank you, ma'am. So for that particular school, if you'll remember going back to I think it was early spring, they removed that process. So what had happened is through the RTIB, there is the punitive measure, and eventually you get to the proactive measure. So in meeting with the RTIB, the administrator meeting with the RTIB team of teachers, they wanted to be a little bit quicker in implementing some of the proactive measures, but they didn't really do a lot of training around the proactive measures, and so it got a little bit out of control. So when Dr. Woodard and I met with the administrator, he realized it as well, met back with the RTIB team of teachers. They took that method out, and they re-implemented where they were with the punitive measures until they could get to a point where they could implement the proactive measures again. They're still not there. They're still in the punitive measures, but I do know at that particular school that disciplinary referrals are down, so they are looking better.
Is there any other discussion? Ms. Hopkins?
When we went to the, that was one of the things that was so interesting, when we went to the conference about the trauma-informed things, and when we went in the classroom, to get the learning, the instructor asked us what were things that we are dealing with today that we weren't dealing with years and years ago, and a lot of things came up, the cyberbullying, so many things. It was like, it was trying to get you to understand what a child in the classroom that might be acting out, the purpose of it is trying to get to the why instead of throwing out, it's like I said, taking the kid out, get bad out. What's happening to the child? Are they hungry? Are they, do they have proper shelter? Because when kids don't have their basic needs met, or they're being bullied, or other things are the problem, they act out. And it's not that they're trying to be a problem. Their circumstance and their environment has them as such. And yes, we want all children safe, but the other part of it is what the teacher has to go through trying to be restorative, the restorative piece. It takes everybody involved, parents involved, the principals involved, the teachers involved, trying to get, I guess, under that RTBI training so you know what's a true issue and what is something, like you said, that's really dangerous, really harmful, but getting it all in a balance. And this is going to take a lot of work, a lot of research, a lot of study. And while we need what Dr. Marzak talks about sometimes, the behavioral interventions and the psychologists and getting other tools like that on board to assess these things more intently so that we can kind of put the fires out in that respect. Because it's just a lot more going on that kids go through, period, that teachers go through. And, so...
I also attended one of those, and that's one of the reasons I've asked the questions, because one system that presented to us had gone to completely restorative. They even had done away with APs and in turn put psychologists in each school in that place so that they could do, restorative work. So I was interested in that. I'm not sure I wanna do away with, do that, but I just know that's what the coming thing is. They talked about having what students have to deal with. What teachers may have the same problems in their home that those students are dealing with too. They're dealing with problems. So, yeah, it's a new day with social media and everything, so it really is. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to agree with really what everyone has said, and you put it all together, and that's why we call this a multi-tier, support system, because, 85% of your students usually in a class or in a school, that first tier of just explaining rules and consequences, et cetera, that's all they need. And then you get another percentage of students that they're the ones that may not, that would take more time to correct, et cetera. Well, they need more intervention, and so you bring more people involved to work with those students as we move forward. And then you get that last 5%, that tier 3, and they have gone through tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and they need the most intervention that we can give before they move on to another setting if necessary. So that's why we call it a multi-tier system of support, and RTIB squared is a multi-tiered system of support. And if we're all doing it and kind of moving the same way, and to go back to the question about the school that was doing had to do 10 things in the class, we're all on RTIB squared, okay? We shouldn't be doing all these other different things that don't fit the model that we're using. Okay.
I do think, excuse me, Mr. Sims, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, I'm all in support of every child needing education and needing help. What I don't want is the 95% to suffer on the backs of the 5%. And so, if a child needs discipline, or I would be in support of corporal punishment back in our schools. I know it probably wouldn't happen, but I would support it today. But I don't want our 95 to suffer because of the 5. And I feel like hearing from teachers that that's happening. And I've heard that from multiple teachers.
Sure. I want to explain that this is our district policy. Nothing has changed except if we have to exclude someone, we just make sure we're teaching and educating them as just say go home for 2 days. So the virtual alternative setting is making sure the education is continuing, but there's some times where John or Sherry need to be away from our school environment. So that's still the same. It's about how we do it and keep their learning going at the same time so that when they come back, they're not further behind. So that's what the law really is trying to do. We all know there's times that Tommy needs some time away from this school environment, but we're going to provide supports to Tommy while he's at home or where he's at, whether he's at the Boys and Girls Club during the day, doing his assignments and doing his work, instead of just say go away for 2 days and come back and see us in 2 days. So we stay connected with the student.
I really like that because what do they do for 2 days? Would they be out on the street? They could get in trouble, whatever. Yeah, sleep in, whatever.
And may I add one thing? If we at the next board meeting, if you choose to approve this movement and making sure we're following the law, one thing that we're going to do will be working with community, because number one, we don't want students just to be, even if they have to spend time away and they're on virtual, we're looking at opportunities to bring our faith-based communities involved, give them a safe place to go and do their work with the Boys and Girls Club. We're working with the community centers in the community so that they're not home alone. They're somewhere to where they can access the computers, et cetera, and they will have an opportunity to let community be a part, because part of RTIB squared has a community piece as well, and what is their role. It's not just on the school system. So when they are separated from us, we still want them to get the proper guidance and supports they need instead of just being home alone.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes,
Lane. I do think I'm gonna keep it on new business though, because there's just too many board members not here. So, if there may be questions at the, all right, thank you. Next is TSBA requested change, excuse me, Ms. Hopkins, I didn't see it.
I just wanna share this real quick. Just talking about that, it was a story that came to my mind. Does it, everybody had known here Dr. Ben Carson? Yeah. He tells his story on a thing, and he was talking about when he was in school, he was in grade school, he used to get in trouble all the time, and he was very angry, and he didn't know why, you know, things at home and stuff, but he was very angry. He would do things to act out, and one teacher, you know, kind of mentored it and helped him along the way. But you just think about that. Every child, no matter what they do, they have a purpose for being here, and they don't all mean to do the things they do. But he went on to do great things, you know. The first conjoined twins were separated by that man, but he was angry as a child. But somebody took him along, helped him through whatever he was going through, and he, you know, made great things. And all children can do that if we are able to do restorative practices.
Agreed, thank you. Okay, moving on, the TSB requested policy changes. Dr. Marzak, do you need to speak to that?
Just really quick, ma'am. So, this was a meeting between Mr. Perriman, Mr. Woodard, Mr. Lindsay, and myself. We went through every single policy recommended from TSBA. So with each of those that are recommended, they're all redlined with the additions. The only thing that's different is one of these is a new policy because it split two of our other policies. Oh, and I'd made a note about which one it was. There we go, 4201.
Yeah,
4201 is new, because 4200 originally had two, but 4201 split off. So that's the only new budget. And sorry, 4608 is new as well. And so those will all be in red.
Okay, let me look at 460. Any questions? This is, what this is, TSBA has sent us policies to update, and two of them are new, and, have you all had an opportunity to look at these? Do you want to feel comfortable with being on consent, or? Mr. Beaver said, let's put them on new business, just give a chance to look at them, okay?
Okay. And the dates won't be added until the board actually approves them.
Right.
Before they're sent off to TSBA.
Okay. All right, all of the policies, 3.423, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 210 are policies, you want to speak to?
And there's actually a 211. For some reason, it ended up down at 5.8 after donations. Don't know how it ended up down there at the bottom, but that should be 3.4.2.11,
All right.
which should be payroll procedures, 2.802, food service payday calendar.
Wait.
The 5.8 is what went through the Financial Management Board tonight.
Right.
So anything that hasn't been approved by the Financial Management Board is being put under FYI because it's not completely done yet.
Never mind.
So that is in the correct spot. So next,
Actually, one was put off.
one was actually put off. That's not even on here because
Okay.
the only thing in that was just a one-word change, but again, they postponed it. So I think this one will, at the board, at the full commission, not the full,
Yeah, I think so.
at the board meeting, it will move up out of FYI, because right now, Doug put it on there just because we have to wait till Financial Management Board approves it before we can even bring it over here.
And once again, because we're in the 81 Act, all of the policies are generated by the Financial Management Board. They oversee both the commission and the school board. What we need to do is just accept or approve. We don't make these
To add 'em
policies,
to your
just to
website,
add
to
them
add
to
'em to
our
your manual.
website, so that as we use them, we're under the same travel policies, purchasing policies, all that.
Yes.
Go
So
ahead.
these will have to be posted the right amount of time, and once all that's happened, so probably about February, these will finally be added in, sent off to TSBA.
But I think that we can put all of those on consent.
So does even though there are Financial Management Board policies, so the TSBA still has to like add them to their manual for Murray County specifically. I'm not understanding that part, because like, anything that on the county side or financial management board side, any policy that we pass is specific to the county. So not all counties are gonna have the same limits on purchasing or the same limits on what we have in there. It's just specific to our county. So I'm guessing, like, my question is, does the TSBA just say these policies are what they have for their records for Murray County, or?
Yes.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. I was like, I didn't realize that TSBA did that, so.
All of our policies are housed on their website,
Okay,
and then we link to them.
okay.
Good question.
So if it's always y'all, I'm gonna put all those on consent, because that's just,
Do have
formality.
one more statement to make.
All right.
Since the Financial Management Board approved these to be followed by our office back in October, we are required to follow these as soon as Financial Management Board approves it. So our office has been following it, and employees of Murray County have been, on both sides, have been following these already. Just wanted to put that out there, that as soon as Financial Management Board approves something, our office,
It's done.
per comptroller's office, we have to start following it, so.
And all we're doing is asking TSBA to put
put
it
it
on
on
our
there.
website. That's it. I mean, we're not debating them or anything. It's all just a matter of getting them all in
Getting
the
them
right.
on the same manual.
Yes, that's right. So any question about this? Not that we could do anything about it, but okay. I can, right, maybe. All right, let's go on to other business, instructional bids. We have a purchase of an online math. Who's gonna speak to that? That's you?
It is just the renewal of the, online subscriptions that we renewed, last year. Just a renewal.
And this is budgeted.
Yes, ma'am, this is
Okay,
budgeted.
okay. Any questions or concerns about that? And then can we move that to consent? Yes. Next is a purchase from CCTE for Chromebook protection plan. Can you speak to that? What?
So this is just recommending approving the request for Career Technical Education to purchase the protection coverage for their 350 Chromebooks that they purchased for their 14 programs. The funding is in the account 141E 71,300 399,
It's
and it's
budgeted.
aligned with key number 7 is budgeted. Yes,
All right.
ma'am.
Okay. Any questions? Then we'll put that on consent. Okay, operations budgeted, we got the purchase of a projector and screen for the auditorium at Mount Pleasant High School.
Yes, ma'am, that needs to be removed. The school was purchasing that themselves and did not read the bid correctly. They don't have enough money,
Okay,
so they're removing that.
all right. Next is the purchase of laptops for Battle Creek School.
And I'll ask, Mr. Schuyler to speak to this, because he's directly involved in this.
Okay.
This is the second year purchase. When the school was built, the initial year, there was money built in to buy devices. This is the second purchase that was budgeted, that was put into my account to purchase devices. Mr. Seal and, Mr. Reynolds met with the principals and said, hey, what kind of devices are we using? That being said, what kind of devices would you like to purchase? That being said, I know we haven't had a meeting and some things are held up in the county commission, but these devices, obviously, if purchased for the school, I think Ms. Morency and the committee had it to where we were looking at maybe distributing these devices district-wide, but that's what this is. This is the budgeted money for the second round of purchasing devices for the schools.
This is over and above what we,
So when the school was initially built, there was a plan for after the school opened, so prior to when so last budget year, we had to have electronic devices, obviously, when the school opened, which was the previous budget year. So we budgeted into the building of the school devices once the school opened into this year, and so obviously we had to wait till October till the budget was approved. Then we were waiting for the Lenovo leases to get approved, which still hasn't happened, so we're running out of time. So we had actually met with the principals prior to see what devices they wanted, and this is what has come
Okay.
out of that.
and it's budgeted.
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right. Any question, Mr.
Yeah.
Fulbright?
I just got a quick question. I see you went through the buy board contract, which I'm not a fan of. But, how was Howard Technologies selected? Cause I know on the, vendor list for buy board, there's 89 different technology companies. How was this one selected?
So, depending on the device, like, I think, are the iPads listed on there, or is it just laptops?
They're separate, this is just the laptops.
So you're talking about just the laptops? So if I'm not mistaken.
And I'll have the same question for the next one, so
Yeah,
if you can answer
so,
them.
state contract, state of Tennessee has a contract for Apple, so I'm sure the contract that's there, which obviously we have to have copies and follow rules for. The laptops, Dave, are those on state contract too? Three bids? So three different vendors bid? Okay.
On the iPads or on the laptops?
Laptops. And the iPads are state contract, correct? State contract that actually, full disclosure, was going to expire, but is being renewed this month, so.
Okay, I guess I'm confused then, 'cause it says the buy board contract. So it was actually put out for bid? Is that attached to this? I didn't look to this. Not that I'm doubting you, but I'm just kind of curious to see it.
Did we?
It's not attached. But the bid number's on there. Okay.
If you want the additional pricing for the next meeting, obviously we can show you what different vendors said. It's not.
I'm just glad that we put it up to
Yeah.
bid, quite honestly, 'cause
Yeah.
we don't always do that.
Yeah.
So, Can't complain with that.
Yeah.
That's the way it should be. Thank you very much.
The second one is the same thing, then.
Apple
So
is-
any
is state
questions
contract.
about that? So are we all right to put both of those on consent? All right. Liberty Mutual invoice?
We received that invoice. I think your packet shows you all of the documentation that goes along with this. This is from an old, suit against the county. I think it's about 9 years old, 8 to 9 years old. It was recently settled, and this was actually from when we were with Liberty Mutual back then we left them, went to another insurance company, and then we're back with them now. Our deductible now is $2,500 in this type of situation, but because the deductible under that previous contract was $10,000, we received a bill from the settlement for $10,000. That is not budgeted for in anywhere in our budget, and so we're just asking you to move that money from fund balance so that we can pay this.
Okay, explain to me again. We need to pay it from fund balance.
Yes, ma'am. That money was not budgeted anywhere, across the board.
Okay, any discussion? Another fund balance issue. Are we okay to put that on consent? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Fulbright.
Well, we're contractually obligated to Liberty Mutual to pay it, so. I called Mr. Woolever about this.
My blood pressure just shot up. They could cancel our insurance, so.
We did negotiate a better deductible this time, though, just so you know.
Okay, well, I'll put that on consent since we don't wanna lose that. All right, next is, renewal of advertising agreement with District Solutions.
This is the advertising on the buses, and it's time to renew that contract with them. And everything attached there will show you the board approval of what we've got with them now as far as, and what we've the money's received from that program. So we included, right now we've, received $101,000 since we initiated that program, I think, 2-3 years ago, something like that. So it's just time to renew.
Okay, all right, Mr. Beaver.
One quick question. I think it's a very good program, but how is the money used?
Speaking as the former transportation director, it wasn't given to me. It's actually budgeted into the budget, and as they go through the budget process in the spring, it was built in. So it can be at various places throughout the GP.
It's revenue.
Yes, ma'am.
So so it flows through everybody. Okay. Any other, so I would assume that would be consent also. I don't have anything else. We're to FYI. Is there anything anybody needs to ask or know, or if not, then I'm gonna adjourn the meeting. Okay? Dr. Marzak?
Merry Christmas.
Ah.
This is our last meeting
Ha-
before,
I know
Christmas
it.
next,
I hope everybody has
week.
a, and it
Merry
looks like the
Christmas.
rain has stopped, so we've waited it out, and thank all of you for coming. I know the weather was challenging. So have a great holiday.